Rain did not stop Rishi Sunak from making the surprise announcement that could potentially impact his and his Conservative Party's future course. The UK Prime Minister has called for a general election on the 4th of July, an election that could have been held in January next year.
Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future, to decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Now remember, this would be UK's first election in 5 years, and it is emerging to be a rather significant contest, with some observers suggesting that it could threaten the governing Conservative Party's future and the party would lose to the opposition Labour Party led by Keir Starmer. And why is that? Well, Rishi Sunak's approval ratings have been at an all-time low since the past few months. The opposition Labour Party is running about 20 percentage points ahead of the Conservatives, if we go by the reports, and therefore his decision to hold an early snap election. Remember, if the Labour wins, Britain will see 6 prime ministers in 8 years, a situation that the country has not witnessed since the 1830s. Observers suggest that since taking the Prime Minister's post less than 2 years back, Rishi Sunak has failed to position himself as a reformer, technocrat and a steady leader, as his aim was. The cost of living crisis, illegal immigration and healthcare in UK has added to his woes. Conservatives accuse the Labour of planning tax increases and being unprepared for global challenges. Labour, on the other hand, blamed the Conservatives for economic mismanagement over the past 14 years, resulting in instability and slow growth in the country. Sunak's decision has received a divided response from his own party. Some Tories believe the time is right for an election, considering potential legal challenges and economic uncertainties, while others said that they were shocked by it. So how does this really move forward, and why, in the first place, was this snap general election called by the UK Prime Minister when he knows that it could also mean that they lose the election? Let's talk more about this. I'm joined by Dr. Yukteshwar Kumar, Deputy Chairman, Conservative Party. I'm also joined by Mike Buckley, journalist and commentator. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us on Nation Tonight. Mr. Yukteshwar, I'd like to start with you. Why is it that this snap general election has been called when the fact of the matter is that an early election could also mean that, the Conservatives could lose?
Sure. Thank you very much. First of all, I am the deputy chair of Bath Conservative Party and not the whole UK Conservative Party. So my disclaimer. Number two, why now? Now, to be honest, even the cabinet members or ministers were surprised, quite a lot of them, including Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and others with whom I very closely work. But it seems that this is the right time, and Rishi thought that the economy has been growing much better than comparable countries like Germany, like Spain, Italy, France, and even the United States of America. Number two, his promise on inflation has been fructified because inflation just a few months ago was 11% and or have 11%, and now it is below 3%, almost 2%. Thirdly, today itself, the report about immigration or illegal immigration, both illegal and legal immigration, came, and the immigration is down by 10% compared to last year. June and July in the UK is also a good time for campaigning, maybe. For example, the Labour Party's senior most campaign manager, he was going on leave to Scotland in July, and people thought that Labour is not ready maybe for the full campaign. Again, these are small things, but Rishi Sunak thought that this is the right time, although you are very, very right that his approval ratings and Conservative Party's approval rating is certainly not as high or certainly 20% below the Labour Party. So it is, I mean, some people
Okay.
are mystified, some people were surprised. So was I, but I broke the news to you and other uh, television news agencies in India as soon as I learned yesterday. But yes, it will be a good campaign because summer it will be a good time. It's a almost holiday time till 9 o'clock. The sun is out, so of course till
Okay.
7, 8 o'clock in the evening, people can campaign. Thank you, Shreya.
Okay, let me take this across to Mike. Mike, of course, as Dr. Yukteshwar says, that summertime will be good time for campaigning, but will it be a good time for the Conservatives and Rishi Sunak, considering the fact that, he has a long list of challenges that he's been facing, especially in the post-COVID era. There's the NHS healthcare system that is seeing crisis. There is the problem of immigration that he talks of time and again. There is, of course, also environmental issues, the economy, rising inflation, all of that combined, along with his approval ratings being at an all-time low. Would this be a good time actually for Rishi Sunak to be calling this general election?
Well, lots of people were very surprised yesterday that he did call the election because the Conservative Party are around 20 points from the polls behind the Labour Party, the main opposition party. So in most circumstances where a government is a long way behind in the polls, in the UK, they wait right until the end of the 5-year term to call an election. So lots of people were very surprised yesterday that Rishi Sunak went ahead and did that. It seems all but inevitable that Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives will lose this election and the Labour Party will win the election. And indeed, Sunak calling the election now seems to be almost him just admitting defeat, admitting that he can't turn the situation around, even if he waits until later in the year when we may see some better economic data. And the gentleman you just had on talked about the fact that our economy is doing a little bit better than some other economies right now. But this is in a context where the UK economy, under the last 14 years of Conservative rule, has done incredibly badly. I was reading something this morning saying that the average household, the average family in the UK is about £10,000 poorer, so about $15,000 poorer than they would have been had the economy kept growing at its historic rate of about 2%. This spring, from January to March, the government, Rishi Sunak, has been saying that the economy has been growing very well. It actually grew 0.6%, and this was after a recession at the end of last year. So actually, their economic management has been incredibly poor, and that is one thing that the public will judge them on. People feel poorer, in part because wages really haven't kept pace with prices. Wages haven't really got up here since 2008, but also prices have gone up so much in terms of housing, but also more recently energy and food. And indeed, it's not to say that Rishi Sunak has been Prime Minister for all of that 14-year period, but he's held a significant role for pretty much all of the last 5 years. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer, so Finance Minister for quite a long time, and then became Prime Minister about 18 months ago. So he is responsible for a lot of the harm, and he's responsible for a lot of the financial stress and indeed crisis that lots of people are living through. But it's not only his bad management, it's also just that he hasn't looked like an effective leader. 2 years ago, when he ran for leader of the Conservative Party, he pitched himself as a kind of sensible, centrist, moderate, capable, competent candidate. And actually, he hasn't governed that way. He's veered from policy to policy. Instead of focusing on things that are really important to people, like bringing down waiting lists in the NHS or improving people's standard of living or bringing costs down, he's focused on some, in a way, kind of quite odd policies. So you might have heard the Rwanda policy, where instead of processing asylum claims in the UK, we would send people on planes at huge expense to Rwanda, thousands of miles away, which is, of course, a huge carbon cost, but a huge financial cost as well. And that policy is now never going to be realised because Sunak will be out of government before any flights can take off, which is a good thing for asylum seekers, but also will save the UK a lot of money. So,
okay,
in a way, I think they've gone early. Sunak has gone early. I guess most people seem to think because he thinks that this will mean they will lose fewer seats now than they would have done had they waited until the autumn to go. That's the only possible rationale.
Mike, he's also in fact called it, he plans to hope to outgun Keir Starmer, the Labour Party leader, and he's called it one of the greatest political comebacks in history if that happens. But, if we go by opinion polls, Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the Labour is doing much better. They're moving ahead of the Conservatives. And if that's true, what is working for them? Is it just anti-incumbency?
No, it's not just that. I mean, the Labour Party was last in government, it left government in 2010, so 14 years ago now. Over the last 14 years, Labour has had its own troubles and trials. We've had different leaders. We've been occupying different places on the kind of ideological spectrum. So from 2015 to 2019, we've been much more to a sort of extreme left-wing position under the then leader. Since Keir Starmer took over 4 years ago, he's very much brought the Labour Party back to the centre ground and turned it into a much more professional, competent operation. And as you know, for a change of government to happen, not just in the UK, but in any country, two things need to happen. The public need to lose faith in the existing government, the ruling party, in this case, the Conservative Party, but also look at the main opposition and think, I trust you, or we trust you, to run the economy, to keep us safe, to do the basics and to do them well. And people look at Keir Starmer, and if you look at polling, and the public aren't saying, we are desperately excited, this man is an exciting politician, we think he's going to usher in a golden age. There isn't that sense of joy and excitement that there is actually very, very rarely about a political leader. But what there is a belief that he's a decent human being, that he's competent, that he's got a plan to get the economy back on track, that he's got a plan to reduce the cost of living, and also that he will take action to improve things that are important to people and make a big difference in people's lives, like the economy, but also the health service, transportation, education. There is a sense that after 14 years of Conservative government, and indeed lots of cuts to public services, there are lots of things in the UK now that they're just broken and they don't work anymore. And people are really sick to the back teeth of that.
Dr. Yukteshwar, one of the reasons why political parties across the world win elections is because they provide hope to the people. They provide hope to the aspirations of the people of a country. And in this case, you said, the summer is going to be good for campaigning and it's going to be a good battle that's going to be fought between Labour and Conservative. But what is it that the Conservatives will do different this time around? How do you plan to reach out to the average British citizen who is seeing and who's going through the crisis at, say, NHS or the immigration issue that people are troubled with? How do you plan to really counter these challenges?
Is this to me? Shreya, is this question to me, please? Yeah. Now, we very simply, in 2010, when Labour Party was in power and when they had to demit the office after losing the election, the finance minister, to say the exchequer here, as we call, he said, he left a note, there is no money left. There is absolutely no money left for the government. And that was the note. Now, people should believe that the person who can lead the nation much better and trusted person like Modi in India, who has been in power for 10 years, and people trust him, unlike the other political parties in India. And similarly here, Conservatives have run the country very well, and you must remember, I know somebody could laugh very well because there was recession, but only for 2 quarters, and 2 quarters is nothing, just 6 months recently. We are doing much better than many other economies, as I said. Now, you must not forget that in 2015, for 5 years, we did very well, and the economy was better, and that's why in 15, 17, and 19, 17 and 19 were snap elections, and that's why people gave us so much of majority. Now, we must also not forget that after 15, there was a big elephant in the room, and that was Brexit. And then quite a lot of time, money was wasted on resolving the issue of Brexit. I myself was a Remainer, to be honest, but whatever was decision of the people in this country, we have to abide by that. And then came COVID, the crisis which engulfed economies in many, many countries. And then as soon as COVID was almost over, then Ukraine and Russia war, and then now Israel and Palestine, and who knows what. I am a China expert. I read Chinese, as you know, and Taiwan and China, as you were showing on your own television. So these were the international problem, and which has impact on every single economy, not only a small, tiny countries like UK, which is only 3.6 trillion US dollar economy, not even 4 trillion. Of course, it's a tiny country
Right.
population-wise. So there has been huge impact, but the UK is an important economy. It's a G8 country, and people can trust us because of the way Rishi Sunak
All
has
right, so we'll
handled the
have to see,
matter.
Dr.
And more
Yukteshwar, how it really
important,
pans out for Rishi Sunak and conservatives like yourselves. But, Mike and Dr. Yukteshwar, for somebody who claims that he's not a betting person, Rishi Sunak has clearly taken a massive gamble with this one. Let's see how it moves forward for him. I'll have to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for both of you gentlemen for joining us on Nation Tonight and sharing your perspective on this surprise announcement by Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister.